somebody I ran into at Cincinnati Pride, and somebody I just met downstairs on a warm Cincinnati weekend from Lakeview United Church of Christ. It's Pastor Todd Peterson and Corey Neiman. You're the
youth, children, and family minister.
And then you all are located in?
We're in Mainville, Ohio, which is we're about a mile from Kings Island.
Yep.
Okay, so have you always had to tell people I live next to?
We're up at Kings Island.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is the landmark.
I work at Kings Island, right? Like I live right there. Yeah.
In fact, we have congregations from around the country that come in this area to do mission trips. They spend the night at the church so that they can go to Kings Island and then go on to their mission trip. So we are like the check-in place.
Well, don't you get like so you could even say, I want this group to come, and we're going to use Kings Island as a selling point. That's a cool thing. I never thought about that. And you have a little place to stay, anyways. Well, thanks for being here. So 1964 is when it started. I was looking at the church's website.
Right.
What? So where you are now is not where you've always been.
Correct. It's been an interesting journey, kind of the classic mainline Christian roller coaster, up and down, and it grew a lot when they first started because there were a lot of young families in that Landon, Mainville area. Mm-hmm. That's kind of, that whole planned community, have a family, live here. And the church really was a wonderful resource for that need. But as things have changed, we at the church have discovered that we needed to change along with that.
But it started out with two different churches. And how did you end up, as Landon kind of got you all there, right?
Correct. It was, there were a couple of churches who actually technically dissolved so that Lakeview could come together. And so that's how it started. And, started in a little side building with orange plastic chairs and just grew from there and has continued to try to be vital in the community, because that's really our goal.
It was so what was that like when I know in churches it's I don't know if it's like companies or entities, or when they merge or dissolve or get, do the ideas always merge? How did that work out?
Well, Corey was actually there long before me. Corey actually grew up there.
I grew up at Lakeview. I think one of the fun things about Lakeview is fun, kind of in quotes, is that we don't hide sometimes when there are tensions and struggles, and sometimes change kind of comes about slowly and most everybody is kind of on board. And a lot of the times, though, it's like any family, there's people with one opinion, people with another, and you have to keep coming back to the table and hashing it out and talking about it, because otherwise you're not going to grow. You're going to die, or you're going to stay where you are, Do
you have a recent example of that?
I think our most recent, most obvious is when the church was deciding whether to become open and affirming, say O&A. And there are just people that were still on not even both sides of the fence. There were just so many sides and opinions and thoughts and concerns and misunderstanding.
Is there a classification, O&A? Like, is there a church classification for that?
Well, there is within the United Church of Christ, the denomination. Open and affirming churches are churches who not only welcome everybody, but invite people into full participation in the church, full communion in the church.
So you could be a deacon,
a
leader.
Absolutely. You can be a leader. You can be an ordained clergy person. We have, across the denomination, the LGBTQ label doesn't matter, or we do our best to make sure it doesn't matter. So
how do you make sure it doesn't matter when there are verses in the Bible that, and I always get it wrong and make myself hungry by saying cobbler,
clobber verses
instead of clobber verses. How do you tell the community, just like I asked you, Corey, at Pride? How do I? What did I say? If I'm gay, am I going to hell? I probably was like, I'm going to ask just that way.
Right. You did,
yeah.
Well, I think the first thing I ask people is, have you read those passages? Or do you know what people have told you they say? Because oftentimes what people tell you they say is not what's there.
Because I looked up and there's interpretations for days.
Absolutely.
Obviously.
And I mean, I know we're on a limited time schedule, so we could spend hours.
We have. I want to know what are the clobber verses, and why are they called? I want to know why they're called that, and then what's an example of one?
Well,
maybe?
I think like there's about 8 to 10 verses that specifically always get pulled out when you talk about whether people that are gay are going to hell. I mean, that seems to be. Which is just a terrible question.
And that's not ever what I was told, to be fair. That's just, I think when I ask a question, it's like the most extreme, you know, what can I see the guy in the movie yelling at the kid, you know?
Yeah.
Right? So what's, Well,
let me ask this question. As a part of a denomination that is open and affirming, how do you relate to other Christian denominations that aren't? Is there conflict there? I mean, obviously, across Christianity, you have a lot of different denominations and different practices. So how have you adjusted to that? Is that a conflict for you, or do you work well with other churches?
Well, I think what we try to do is find areas in ministry that we can work together on. I mean, we have worked closely with the refugee relocation program, which is essentially run by the Catholic Diocese in Southwest Ohio.
So you get along with the Catholics
when it comes to the refugee relocation.
I say that as a joke, but no, that's
like
like it's funny because like I remember growing up, it's like the Catholics have their festival, and they can drink. No, so that relationship. So
so what we try to do is find areas that we can minister together in, and we fully recognize that some folks aren't on the same page. We don't really understand, or at least I don't really understand it. But I also recognize that people wrestle with their individual theology on their own, and that's
Is there some kind of movement to try to bring some kind of communication across? Because these days I just feel like there's a narrative out there that says these are Christians and this is who they are and this is what they act like. And and I mean, it's happened in the Muslim community too, the Jewish community. I mean, it's not only Christians that happens to. So how do you combat that narrative that's out there that says, you know, Christians are racist and homophobic and don't care about people or whatever it is that they say? Yeah.
I think a big part of it is we stop trying to defend ourselves in like Christianity and Christians as a whole, and instead really put a focus on action, like where we see a place of this is coming from love, like make sure that we get out there, not just say, oh, we support that, but like, you know, we make sure to show up at Pride and come alongside, you know, groups that are doing refugee relocation or making sure Queen City Soup Kitchen has goods, and really are just trying to be the face of Christianity instead of like the talking point that some people are trying to use kind of, again, as those clobber moments. But then also being very honest when it's like, yep, that's a struggle, you know, and just being very open and honest where the things are tough, and then when we can come kind of from that center point of love, that I think we try and say this is what Christianity is to us. The message of Christianity is love, is, you know, reaching out, and so we really try and be that.
And as I was looking at the verses, or just looking at verses, the overreaching, and does the Bible with homosexuality and everything, the overreaching idea is love, and that's the first commandment. And so that's the defense, and tell me if I got it, if I misread, but like the defense is, well, we were told to love first, and so that minor verse that you pointed out, Jesus loved first, and that verse came.
Yep.
Right, absolutely. I think that's kind of one of the underlying keys. And I read something the other day I thought was really funny. It says, how do you know that God is a woman? Because God made a statement, and then for the next 1,000 years, men decided to try and explain what God really meant.
Okay. That's great. No, that, it makes me think of, you have, I guess that's maybe the human condition is that's human.
Yeah.
But then who gets into heaven?
Well, that's a great question, and fortunately, it's not one I've been tasked to figure out. It's not my job to figure out
okay.
who gets into
Okay.
heaven. And
Yeah.
Well, that's
so
just one of those silly things I think of in the car. If, that church is brown and that one is
Right.
yellow and that one believes this and this is that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which
And
end is up?
I mean, personally, my belief is that the idea of church, religion, and worship is to draw us closer to God, not to draw God closer to us. That what we do or don't do doesn't make God move. That what we do should draw us closer to where God is. And so that's what we try and focus on is yeah, we have traditions and rites and rituals that are meaningful to us because they draw us closer to God.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean they're right for everybody. They're right for us because they draw us closer to God.
And isn't that's a real, and then at the end of the day, that's a real personal thing. Obviously, like people will say, "Well, Chris, you don't go to church." Yeah, but doesn't mean I don't pray, and
Right.
and that's my thing. And
Right.
and I seeing the church as that's their way they worship,
Right.
even though it's the same God. They might take communion once a month.
Yep.
Right, and some people do it every week, and some people do it once a quarter, and some people don't do that at all because they
Right.
don't.
Right.
That's not a rite or a ritual or a sacrament, whatever label you want.
And some
to
people
put
use
on.
the great value grape juice and not the Welch's.
Correct.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then I really get on a diva roll.
So I have a question for you. So in the UCC, which is United Church of Christ denomination, explain what is the focus of your denomination? Like you were just saying about how your church is bringing people closer to God. So explain that. To tell it myself, I grew up at David's UCC in
Oh, yeah.
Dayton.
Nice.
So
I know
that's where I was
David's.
confirmed.
Yeah.
It's because I explain it all the time about the denomination and how it is different than other ones because it's more of an inclusive umbrella of separate churches. So explain that.
Right. Well, there's kind of three legs of the UCC. Number one is individual conscience. We ask people to wrestle with Scripture and to challenge themselves and to be challenged by others. But this is something you have to wrestle with. This is we aren't a creedal church, which is like an old school seminary word. But we don't have you don't have to sign a card that says yes, I believe this, 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 and this. We encourage people to bring doubt and to wrestle with Scripture, and then we ask people to partake in a faith community where they can wrestle together, and kind of the idea of both local congregations and the church denominationally is we try to help people be better disciples, and we try and bring about God's peace and justice in the world. And those are really, we try and filter things through those two questions. So,
Okay.
So what do you do when someone just won't stop challenging you? Because you will. I had a Baptist minister say, "I got called and got blessed to death by this lady," and so because people will just argue not for fun, but just they work. If I come in and say, "Well, I think this my interpretation of this word, and I've diagrammed this sentence," and you'd talk with me about it.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, but
Right.
so because
Well,
there's so many interpretations, so many versions.
and
Right.
there's stuff we can still learn. I mean, you may bring something to the table and we're like, oh.
Now,
what
do you have
think of that?
classes or workshops that people can attend at the
Well, we
church?
do. We do a book group on Thursday evenings. For instance, right now we're just finishing up. We've been reading Matt Desmond's book called Evicted. Prior to that, we read Rachel Held Evans. Had a wonderful book, and unfortunately, she just passed away. And but we try and take on all those kinds of things. We have
Groups that just meet for lunch and
Right.
like fellowship in the sense of just getting together and like talking and being a community. And we call ourselves like a Lakeview family, and part of being family is being present. And that may not mean on Sunday morning. We try and make sure there are things throughout the week for different age groups, for families, for retired folk. And I mean, that's something that we constantly are talking about. How do we make church greater than the four walls of the church and beyond just Sunday morning?
But
you
how-
Make
know?
it more accessible. To,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
How do
Down
you
to
how do
hearing.
you how do you get to the? I mean, specifically like the church. I think about like not well, obviously I use the word modern, but streaming. Why can't I just sit at home and watch church on Facebook? And then what? It's really because for me, it's really hard to get somewhere on a Wednesday night at 7.
Sure.
And I don't have kids, and all this kind of stuff. So how do you get people to show up?
Well, I think it's a great question. It's one that we're struggling with. The whole.
We being every church in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I mean, don't give away trade secrets,
Right.
but it's
well,
like
but it's the idea. It's how
Absolutely.
it's the
you know-
free buffet, right?
Right.
You know?
It's
the
the whole
coffee
idea
donuts.
of the whole idea of like social media and streaming video. And one of the things that we find, at least at Lakeview, is that our faith community really finds a great deal of meaning in being together. People, what we try to do, we are kind of an intergenerational congregation where we have little ones and we have folks who are in that 20 to 50 range, and we have empty nesters, and we have, people who are really experienced in life. And so we try and find ways for all those folks to be able to connect, and that's oftentimes, I think, what pulls people in on a Sunday morning is there's a community. And
once they see that you're real,
Right.
and
I
not that
can't tell you-
not that others are
Yeah.
fake, but
No.
once they see that you're coming correct, if you will,
Yeah.
you are what you say.
Right, we have people who walk in the door and say, I finally found home. I've been
Right.
looking for a long time, and I finally found a place that welcomes me as I am.
Because it's hard with all the black and white, and you just Google and all the damning stuff that you read to not read that on a Saturday night and then go to bed and wake up angry,
Yeah.
not angry, but ready
Sometimes angry.
ready to feel ready to feel like you're going in with one notch down,
Right.
know,
Yeah.
or already your minds are already
Right.
made up. How do you get past that? If I walked in and I was like, oh my, I'm already in hell,
Well, and we have people come in and I see them looking at the door because we're just not because
Right.
our worship, while we are an open and affirming congregation and have real progressive theology, our worship is a little more traditional
Right.
than you're going to find in some of the, there are churches now who are worshiping in what used to be a movie theater, and they have.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Well, I mean, there's a number of
They have
them.
like a rock church up in
Yeah,
Dayton.
they have, they have really great music, big
Yeah.
bands, and video screens.
For folks who don't, this is not against that church, but for folks who don't realize, the one across from Kings Island, when I was in high school, that was my place.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
I miss
Hang
going
out.
in there. No, but I love that they have the building.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah.
so-
you have a more traditional
yeah.
follow of
We have
like,
more
elements.
call and response elements where we we pray together. There's prayers for the community that we speak together, and so the worship sometimes is a little more traditional. And when people hear we're progressive,
Well, and it
theologically,
varies from UCC church.
Absolutely,
I mean,
it does.
very different as you
Right.
go across the country.
Absolutely, especially as you go across the country.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But even here within Cincinnati, there's just a huge range of what happens on a Sunday morning.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And also, I just want to mention, just in fairness, that not every UCC congregation is open and affirming.
True.
The denomination is, but the way the denomination works governance-wise, every local congregation is autonomous. They make those kinds of decisions.
So do you have so you can't just see UCC and say I'm good.
Right.
Right. You would
Okay.
want to, if that's an area that's of concern to you,
Right.
that's something you would want to check out.
And
Sometimes
that's why
it's a long
people
road.
try out. That's why people try out churches,
Yeah,
I guess, too,
absolutely.
because it's about that personal journey too, and you find a church that matches. So my last question is kind of silly, but is there still good places to eat out there after church?
Oh, yeah.
Out in Mainville,
Oh, yeah.
okay, in the suburbs.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's kind of a fun because that's the thing is like who can get to the door first to get to Olive Garden,
Right,
or whatever,
absolutely.
whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Lakeview United Church of Christ is on Columbia Road in Mainville. Kings Island is the it's just north of Kings Island, south of Kings Island. The website is lakeviewucc.com. Thank you so much, Todd and Corey,
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you guys.
for
Thank
being
you.
in Out
Wonderful.
Cincinnati.
Thanks.